Thanks everyone for joining in the latest installment of our technical enablement series for Ingram Micro. My name is Mark Miller, a technology consultant for our East partners for IBM Modern Infrastructure. And today we're going to be talking about IBM Solutions in the cloud. We'll hear from Erin Jurgens, the go-to-market product manager for Power VS, deploying AIX, IBM and Linux workloads in IBM Cloud. Noah Rodriguez, sorry, Jose Rodriguez and Noah Gamache will talk IBM Spectrum Solutions. And finally, we'll wrap it up with Susan Kontos, who will be talking about how OSS can support your journey to cloud. With that, Erin, go right ahead.
Awesome. Hey guys, thank you for being here with us today. My name is Erin Jurgens. Glad to meet you. Look forward to working with you. So I'm going to talk about kind of a state of the offering, if you will, for Power Systems Virtual Server. All right, quick overview, just in case there are those of you who are new here, or just a refresher. Power VS is a Power Systems offering, but it spans two business units at IBM, so systems and cloud, which is interesting. So basically, it's taking what was and what still is Power on-premises and expanding that with options to the cloud through virtualization. So basically, you have your virtual machine here, and then logical partitions or LPARs, which are built on top of that. What's cool about this is that you only have to start with a quarter of a core. So you're not getting a full machine. You can test, you can scale up and down. To a lot of people like dev test, we'll go into some use cases in a minute, but the cloud modernization journey is becoming a must-have, not just a nice-to-have. So a lot of our clients like this option to test it out while seeing how quickly they want to modernize and move to cloud. We are in 14 data centers now globally. We just GA'd in Sydney 05 a week and a half ago. So that brings us to all 4 geos and 7 different countries that IBM has a presence in. And as stated, we have AIX and IBM also Linux workloads that we can deploy applications on top of. All right, let's go into our use cases. So historically, on-premise customers utilize AIX, IBM and Linux to build their workloads. What's cool about Power VS, it's built exactly the same way as on-premises, so you get that same enterprise experience on and off-premise, which a lot of our customers really like, specifically for disaster recovery, partial moves. They want to test out, they want to, COVID's been rough on everyone. You want to prioritize where your resources are and how you allocate those when you move at your price point, etc. So that's really powerful here. You guys, a lot of people here wanted to touch on MSPs, CSPs, and ISVs. If you are a business partner, we are 80% business partner driven. You are extremely valuable to this offering. So a lot of our MSPs want to offer that service to their customer. They want to offer Power VS, so reselling. And then ISVs, we find quite a number of ISVs who want to host and create something on top of Power VS, specifically SaaS offerings seem to be of interest. So again, you can take advantage of that global footprint that we have, and then that modernization of data centers that seems to be a really hot topic as well. A lot of decommissioning of data centers that we're seeing. So this helps to facilitate that discussion, incorporating Power VS. All right, use cases. We've talked about these two, test out, dev test. We've talked about disaster recovery. The enterprise power workloads is also a very powerful use case that we're seeing. Again, clients trust IBM, they trust the relationship that Power Systems has built over the last however many years. They want that same infrastructure. Power VS allows that availability while allowing access to the 190 plus, I believe, other cloud catalog offerings that you get with it. So again, it's all about what the client is trying to do. We'll go into a little bit about the hybrid journey as well here in a moment. All right, why is this helpful? So these are the 4 things that I have found personally, as well as other product managers, that our clients are really looking for. They're looking for that flexibility to modernize, again, at their pace and price point. The integration with IBM Cloud is huge. The shift to OpEx models we're seeing in a lot of cases. They want to avoid CapEx expenses, so the OpEx option is wonderful. If you're trying to refocus your resources or reprioritize, some decommissioning data centers, some just want to offload responsibility to IBM. That's really of help. And then the availability to manage your TCO better. Again, it should not be an on versus off premises discussion. It should be an and see what is most helpful for reducing the cost for our customers. All right, so a lot of new things, but I did want to recap. I was actually putting this together and I was like, wow, we did a lot in 2020. But we brought 7 new data centers, basically 5 new countries in 2020. And then 2020 brought us to all 4 of the geos. We're really, really trying to enhance our compliance and certification roadmap, and then adding new features that we'll go into a lot of these here in a moment, but specifically SAP HANA and NetWeaver certification, making IBM the only company that is certified to do that end to end. No one else has HANA, which is awesome. No one else has the complete global footprint that we do as well. So really great year. This also showed me kind of how much IBM is investing in Power VS. People ask, is this long term? We're ramping up. We're really seeing traction with the offering. So yes, I do see it long term. All right, boom, Power VS and SAP, specifically the hybrid cloud model. So when customers deploy SAP HANA on Power Systems, they can share their processor capacity across HANA VMs in a server and what's called shared processor pools as a feature. So with this capability, customers only need to purchase capacity that can meet the total demand across all of their HANA instances instead of that maximum capacity needed for each instance. So sharing those CPU cycles, they can reduce the total number of cores that they need in a server, thereby lowering their cost of high interest to a lot of people. Since this sharing is automated based on the demand in each instance, it reduces also the management effort and simplifies your deployment. So important to note, HANA instances have 0 upfront costs. And we as IBM Power VS have the security and reliability that is attributed to Power Systems, now also Power VS. So in a nutshell, provision faster, easy to scale up and down, and granularity that has superiority when related to x86 instances in the same boat here. So that's one new awesome thing. Movable IBMI, this GA'd late last year, and we have continued to evolve it. So basically, business partners have a lot of customers that have run IBMI for many years. Even that they've invested a lot in their infrastructure, money-wise and resource-wise. So IBMI mobility basically protects that entitlement of the IBMI instance. So we as IBM give the customers the flexibility to move their existing entitlement to Power VS, keep the existing footprint, and run dev tests in Power VS. So to note here, there's a minor movable fee that's charged, and the rest of the price is SWAMA so that the customer can get that continued support. You must have an existing IBMI entitlement as well as up-to-date SWAMA to take advantage of this. But what's really cool also, if they don't like it, they can move back. So this really gives that flexibility to the customer that they're looking for with IBMI. Lots of IBMI updates here. 7.1 service extension. So we rolled across a couple geos at this point. We're looking to go completely global. I believe Sydney's next. So normally the customer pays double the SWAMA for aged IBMI operating systems. Starting second quarter this year, we rolled out IBMI 7.2 service extension as well. So basically you can bring 7.1 and up to Power VS. We've actually seen several deals that closed because of this. Some of our customers have older operating systems. This gives them that time to modernize. I realize I'm going through this kind of quick, guys. I'm available for questions in the chat after as well, and you can always reach out to me. Virtual tape library of high interest, VTL. So IBMI customers, they traditionally run tape or are set up via tape libraries with our managed service providers for their mission critical workloads on IBMI. Backup and recovery, as we all know, are essential, critical. And then VTL is a software-based solution that can be done in all of Power VS, talking with the on-premises setup. So the existing solution as it was before leveraged VRMS as well as Cloud Connector to cause called ICC. So the downside to that was the performance was pretty slow So it was only really optimal for smaller workloads. So what we've done is we've made the process easier, enhancing features along the way. So you can purchase directly through DSI. As of next week, we're going to make this automated. So this is a huge 3Q feature that's coming live as far as the automation feature very soon, like next week. Okay, networking. A lot of people have, expressed networking enhancements as a desire for Power VS. So this is, the first of several updates. So Direct Link Connect is automated, no need for service tickets. Wonderful, nobody likes service tickets. It can be done now with command lines and scripts, as well as automation of the GRE tunneling, which historically were very challenging as a process to set up. So available today, CLI and API. As of next week, also, this will be automated. So you guys are hearing this at a very good time. We have so many things coming live at the end of Q3. With this as well, with that automation as of next week, the much coveted VPN as a service will be part of that networking update and automation. So yay, VPN as a service, yay, VTL, all the things next week by end of Q3. We have Rail 8.1. So this is really cool because basically with the SAP certification, now this enhances what the customer can get as far as our Linux workloads, as far as deploying HANA instances using Power VS, also taking advantage of the pay-as-you-go billing, which is a really nice feature and offers that flexibility again that our customers are always looking for. So there's a blog. I will have this in the follow-up. Take a look. Of note, we have the highest SAP benchmarks across the industry with our E980s, which is our highest enterprise machine leading the pack as far as SAP benchmarks. All right, positioning. I've done probably 62 win reviews, business partner, direct, a whole bunch of, as well as loss reviews, what's working well, what's not. So in addition to the ways that we have expanded in the last year, even since offering GA, these are the three trends I talked about as far as use cases. So dev test, enterprise workloads, DR. What we're finding is that our clients are using this to modernize, to offload responsibility, and to validate, is Power VS a good fit? Yay or nay? Let's give it a try. And I'll have a couple promotions at the end that you guys can take advantage of as well to help with that story. The complete value here, modernizing at pace and price point that the customer desires. So they have that flexibility to do that on or off premises with Power VS. This map has a lot of color going on, but it struck me because it showed me truly the global presence, the power, pun intended, of Power VS. So what I'm finding in these win stories, that it's not just Power VS, it's not just on premises, it's both. We have our latest client-facing reference that just came up this week is BRF. So congrats to our Brazil team. But they're using a Hortolândia data center, which is an on-premises data center, and they're backing up to Sao Paulo for cloud. I have Toronto backing up to Montreal. I have, many things backing up to Singapore, and then using Sydney or Tokyo. It's really interesting. So our clients are wanting that hybrid story that we can now provide to them. So we literally, versus the competition, we have the largest footprint and the most powerful presence globally. All about that story and finding out what clients want. Again, if this does not show IBM's investment, I don't know what does, but we have very much rapidly expanded. This is just in the last year. And then some key differentiators, if you'd like to talk to this, we have Oracle software support, SAP certification that we've talked about, and then some of the new compliances. Hot off the press, we're about to, within the next quarter, release SOC 2 certification compliance, as well as PCI. So that will be coming up. If you're curious about LGPD, that is the equivalent of GDPR in our country down here, Brazil. Okay, gonna go through this really quickly here, but I have a RACI on the next page. A lot of questions that I get around what does IBM do? What are they responsible for? What does the customer need to manage beyond that? So here's a nice RACI with beautiful colors. basically in a nutshell, IBM is going to manage up to the operating system. Beyond that, the client is going to manage the operating system, AIX, IBMI, or Linux, and then anything on top of that, including the applications that are run. So this is, publicly facing. You can share this if there are ever any questions. And then lastly, I want to take you through some win stories before providing you with some references that you can look for help. These are our 5 that are externally facing. BRF will join this as soon as we get the case study penned soon here. But the top 3 are AIX wins. The bottom 2 are IBMI wins as well. And then in all sorts of different industries, we seem to be, hospital, banking, finance, we are in very high risk environments with low risk, high risk environments with infrastructure that they need to be low risk. There we go. Okay. All right, Larry was our first externally facing client reference. I'm trying to get these to you guys as soon as we have them actually externally available. I have a couple blanketed ones for you as well here. This was really awesome because they were looking to free up the resources during COVID to reprioritize on new products. So they switched the AIX workloads to Power VS, and they're utilizing our Frankfurt data centers. We have externally facing blogs or case studies on all of these that I'm about to show you here that are. So FNZ was actually our Think reference as well. What's really interesting is they were on premises building upon IBMI, their Figaro application, and they wanted to shift to a hybrid cloud environment. Also that shift to OpEx that we talked about before. And they did that using Power VS. What I really like about this one as well is that they were able to give us statistics such as that reduction in cost 15 times faster because they were doing manual tasks. So there's a really great case study that was penned. We also have the Think session that was recorded where the client, John Cullen, will go into a lot more in-depth info on their process and what they did. CCEP is really great. Also, it was HANA on premises, but SAP ECC, and they also used Red Hat OpenShift. This one was great because they were looking also to transform. And what I like about this one is that we actually have a quote from the CIO. So if you're looking for, cloud first digital transformation type of verbiage, we have that in the availability to share that here. This is also AIX. These next 2 I've blanketed because they haven't given us permission yet. They're still onboarding. However, I wanted to show you guys MSP, and some business partner wins here. So this is a financial win. They have been an MSP with Power for the last 15 years. So you can kind of see, the ones where IBM is incumbent is really where we have a competitive edge in the market. They are using IBMI. And what I like about this one also is they gave us that statistic of the better cost, as well as the time to market. And then finally, this is an IT company also blanketed. However, this is a GSI. And they partnered with IBM because they wanted to look at their SAP install base, and then which is very large, and then migrating that to cloud. So the differentiators here are some of the ones that we talked about. So you have an instance where you can refer to. Hopefully this will be an external reference soon as well. But SAP certification, that global footprint, because they're using several different, they're wanting to expand to other geos. And then this was an AIX win also. Okay, promotions that you can use to help you. I like to think of this one as a getting started, like dip your toe in the water, 5K attach. You do need a valid opportunity attached to it, but it's basically non-committal, 5K, cloud credits, test it out. You want to actually dive in the water, try 50 proof. It's much more robust. It does need to have, more significant deal progression though. And then we have options for you to request funding to close your deals. We have, a couple options to help you there. So reach out, let us know how we can help. This is just a little more info on Power VS Attach. I've actually done a video and posted it to Seismic if you have questions on the process, as well as like step-by-step how to apply. And then the last thing here, I won't go through all of these just so you guys know what this is. It will be in kind of backup here, but end-to-end networking, migration, backup, and DR. This is going to show you all the resources that we think you could probably need to help to get you started. per use case. So this is operating system AIX, the next one's IBM I, and then we have Linux for SAP as well. So take advantage of this, reach out. More links for you here, as well as yours truly. Happy to help. Would love to see how we can get Power VS further into the market. And that's all for me today. Appreciate your time, and I'll be on for a little bit. I'll monitor the chat to see if there are any questions.
Thanks, Erin. As Jose and Noah pull up their slides, if you have a question for Erin, you can feel free to come off of mute, or as she said, she'll stick around for questions in the chat.
Questions? Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Mark. My name's Jose Rodriguez. I'm a technical partner architect. I'm specifically assigned for Spectrum Storage Software Solutions. My counterpart in storage is Noah Gamache. And we're going to talk to you about IBM storage solutions that run in the cloud or utilize the cloud. In keeping with the kind of the format that we talked about before in previous enablement sessions, which was to discuss the seven sales plays that we have for the second half of 2021 at IBM, and kind of breaking them into the four pillars of predict, automate, secure, and modernize. We'll introduce where in those pillars these solutions fit. By the way, there's going to be what's called an SQ04, which is sales kickoff for the fourth quarter. And business partners are invited to that too, and you will hear a lot more about sales plays in there. If you have not seen any emails, Mark will send you the registration information, and then you can pass it on to business partners and people who attended here. But let's move forward. Let's start talking about some of the. By the way, just about every one of the Spectrum storage software solutions can use the cloud or can be run in the cloud because it is software. Especially in an IBM cloud, you can always just get the infrastructure and build the, do an IaaS and then build the environment yourself. But we're gonna give you the four top solutions that we've seen and then discuss how you might use it. The first one is Spectrum Virtualized for the public cloud. Now, you understand that Spectrum Virtualized is in every flash system that is sold out there, right? Think of that as being the appliance version for the on-prem version that you're going to be running. But having Spectrum Virtualized in the public cloud expands that. It helps you modernize. If you look at the pillar, it can help you modernize because you can actually use it for container environments, but it can also help a customer set up its infrastructure ready for a container environment if they wanted to, or just use the cloud itself as part of its own infrastructure. What Spectrum Virtualized Public Cloud does is you can actually run a Spectrum Virtualized infrastructure in a cloud, and at the moment, IBM Cloud or AWS. And at AWS, you can basically just go to the marketplace, click on a button, and it builds the infrastructure for you. All you have to do is put the licensing on, and you now have a Spectrum Virtualized instance. Very soon, Microsoft Azure will be, it'll be in that marketplace, and I believe in the roadmap is Google Cloud Platform. But what you can do with this is either you can run your applications in the cloud using Spectrum Virtualized as its storage, especially in the AWS concern, where that really helps you is that you don't have to buy, purchase, or have committed X number of EBC volumes. You can actually use a minimum of 3 and just start creating volumes for all your applications from there. The other thing that it gives you is all the functionality that you have in Spectrum Virtualized on-prem, you will have that capability also in the cloud, which means you can replicate from a flash system 5200 to SV in the for public cloud. You can use copies of clones and snaps, and now the new feature, which is safeguarded copy, you can actually implement that in the cloud. So if you wanted to, you can actually have multiple copies of that volume for extra safekeeping. You can have your production volume running on-prem. You can snap a safeguarded copy, which is kind of a virtual air-gapped copy in on-prem. You can have it replicated, let's say, to AWS, and then at AWS, you can also snap a safeguarded copy, which now gives you another layer. Not only are you virtually air-gapped between these two copies, you now have another virtual air-gap copy between what's in AWS. Okay, so it gives you that capability. It gives you the capability of creating a DR environment for you without having a full data center, or even having an exact copy of what's in your production. You can have a smaller, for only, let's say, the critical applications, smaller environment in the cloud, running in the cloud. Now, another method that you can use Spectrum Virtualize with the cloud is something that's called transparent cloud tiering, TCT. What it does, it allows you to make clones and snapshots, flash copies, and put them in the cloud. Put them in an AWS S3. Put them in an IBM cloud. Put them in Microsoft Azure blob. That's on the roadmap. Okay. But what you can do is point-in-time copies. You can have them out in the cloud. Should something happen, you can pull them from the cloud to rebuild your infrastructure. Kind of like a poor man's DR. If your on-prem goes down, you do have these volumes here where you can stand up another virtualized instance somewhere, whether it's Spectrum Virtualized in the public cloud or another data center, or you brought up another system, and you can restore from those volumes into your now new environment. Okay. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Noah to handle Spectrum Protect Plus.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Jose, and thank you everyone for attending. I really appreciate it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Spectrum Protect Plus. We just came out with the capability to provide or create backups of data that lives within Amazon. We're also able to recover and do data reuse with that data as well, right? Using elastic block storage snapshots. So pretty cool, right, that you can have a Spectrum Protect backup environment that's backing up data that lives in Amazon. Now, before we jump kind of too far into that, I want to talk about kind of the two primary use cases I see, right? Where you would have a Spectrum Protect Plus server that lives in your data center, and you're creating backups of your maybe VMware environment or your different programs and applications within that data center, and then shipping them off to Amazon or maybe to IBM's cloud or to a public cloud as your backup target or repository. That is kind of one situation, right? The other would be having Spectrum Protect Plus itself live in Amazon or IBM cloud and creating backups of the data that lives there. So it's kind of two different sides, right? The other thing I kind of think about, if you're backing up from your data center into Amazon's cloud, you may want to have a secondary copy of Spectrum Protect Plus living there just to recover in case your primary data center goes down. So imagine a flood happens, your primary data center is now down. You could then use that secondary copy of Spectrum Protect Plus to start recovering into the cloud. This is another layer on top of the transparent cloud tiering and Spectrum Virtualized for public cloud that Jose talked about. The main difference in my mind is that this is creating backup files based on snapshots that are taken at the application level. So you think of VMware snapshots or snapshots of those Elastic Block Store snapshots. You're creating backup files, right, essentially, as opposed to taking snapshots of the entire volume based on the storage array itself. But this gives you a great low-cost option where you can, create backups either within the cloud or within your data center and ship them off to the cloud as well. So I'll pass it back to you, Jose, for the next section here.
Thanks, Noah. So if you hear this, basically what we've been saying is it helps modernize the data center. So we're hitting the modernize pillar of the sales place, right? It helps automate, because you can a lot of these functions can be automated, and we've specified how you can have air-gapped copies, how you can have copies to be able to recover from incidents. So that's the secure pillar of the sales play. Now, in the let me go ahead and, oops, went too far. In the predict area, that's, where we're creating the data fabric for an AI, an ML or a DL workload. Spectrum Scale surfaces as one of the biggest solutions that we have that fit that area, right? But Spectrum Scale, you can have software and you can run it on-prem. You can create, if you've got the servers, you can create your environment. We have an appliance version, it's called the ESS. And now you can actually run Scale also in the cloud. At the moment, it's you have an AWS, you can run it in a Google cloud platform, you can run it in Oracle, and you can run it in an IBM cloud. So it's got multiple places where you can actually run it. And you can have instances of Scale use each other as either DR backups or as, think of them as local caches of your environment. Let's say your main repository is on-prem, so you've got a large ESS environment. So that's your system of record. But you've got development departments, and you've got maybe even some let's say customer-facing applications that are around the world, and you want better response times. You can actually have what we call AFM, Active File Management, instances acting as caches where you have local copies of that data in the geographically placed areas. It could be an instance in AWS in let's say North America, and you can have another instance in Australia using one of the IBM cloud data centers there. And your main repository is your on-prem. Let's say Los Angeles. That's where I'm at now. So that your users from Australia will get better response times because they're using the instance, the copy that's in the IBM cloud in Australia. And those that are in let's say in the East Coast are getting, there's a development group there. They're working on developing something for you. They can have a local copy, and they can have better performance there. Okay, so that's one of the things you can do using Spectrum Scale running in a public cloud. The other thing that it does help you with here is, of course, it sets you up for modernization. With Spectrum Scale, we do have CSI drivers where you can use it in a container environment, so it uses the storage directly. And by the way, you will be hearing about a hyper-converged infrastructure, HCI, which is our Spectrum Fusion. You'll pay attention to some of the news that we're going to be putting out there. It will have instances of Scale in it. And again, you can set that up with AFM, and maybe your AFM instances could be Spectrum Scale running in a public cloud. For that, I'm going to pass it over to Noah to talk about cloud object storage.
Thanks, Jose. So yeah, to round out our presentation, I wanted to talk a little bit about IBM Cloud Object Storage, or IBM COS. Now, in this conversation around the cloud, Erin said something interesting where she said it's not on-prem or the cloud, it's on-prem and the cloud, right? Working together, right? The hybrid or multi-cloud approach. So with IBM Cloud Object Storage, you can continue to get that as an on-prem or private cloud offering, being the hardware that you could install in your own data center, but you can also purchase it as software only. And you can purchase it within the IBM public cloud today. So just a service that's living in the IBM cloud, providing the object storage that you need. You can also deploy it into other public cloud vendors like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud Platform. It's just not on the, Jose, could you go back one, please? But yeah, it's just not in the marketplace today. So just know that you can deploy IBM Cloud Object Storage either within the IBM Cloud or within the other public cloud offerings. And of course, on-prem, like I already mentioned there. And I think the note on working with the cloud, right? Maybe not against it, or it's not a versus situation, but I think of it as a better together kind of idea. Next slide, Jose. And lastly, we just wanted to say thank you so much, and we really appreciate the time. I'm not really sure who's next, so I'll just pass it off. Mark, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks very much, Jose and Noah.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, while Jen, I'm not really sure who's is it Sue or Jen who is going to be sharing the slides?
So hi, Mark, it's Sue Kontos, and both Jen and I will be talking to the group today about open source software and our solution in that space.
Excellent.
So
do you wish to drive your own slides?
I sent them over, but I can do that.
Oh, it's up to you. I can pull them up. No problem at all.
Do you have them? Actually, I sent a later version to Cheryl at about 11 o'clock. Do you have that version?
I sure do.
Thank you,
just
Mark.
get that set up.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions in the meantime while I pull this up, we can do that, or drop them in the chat. Feel free to get those answered.
So just as an introduction, I'm Sue Kontos, and I am part of the TSS channels team. So I help support the business partners around the TSS portfolio. And I'm joined here today by Jen Miller. And Jen is one of our business development managers, and she has responsibility for the OSS solution. So we're going to tag team a little bit on this presentation. And really my purpose today, thank you, Mark, for loading that, is to get you interested in this solution and really want to learn more. And we do have plenty of ways for you to learn more about this solution, but I wanted to take you a little bit through some of the material today to let you know how to sell and position this solution and why it would be important to you as a seller as well as your firm. So next chart, please. Okay, so for the agenda, yeah, we could skip the agenda.
Sorry,
Okay.
I got a little overeager there.
That's okay. I'm just going to talk about why open source software is important today, what it is and why it has value to our clients. What does the IBM solution look like? Who you should target as your audience when you have these conversations, and why sell it? Why is it good for you as the seller? And then some key next steps where we're there to help. So next, please. All right, so if anyone's taken courses like revenue storm selling, you know that the best way to start some of these conversations is to talk about the trends, right? So I thought I would take the advice of Revenue Storm and talk to you a little bit about the trends around OSS, or open source software. So there's some pretty high percentages and statistics out there, and these statistics come from IDC, Forrester, and some of IBM Insight's work. that was done. So one of them being 95% of the mainstream IT organizations leverage OSS assets today in mission critical IT portfolios. So I put that one out there because frankly, I found that pretty surprising. For me, I always thought it kind of lived more in the DevOps space, not so much in mission critical IT space. So I thought that bringing this to your attention will let you know that it's out there pretty widespread throughout most companies, right? 55% of the enterprises are using 5 or more types of open source software. Some other statistics besides the ones that you see here are that 75% of IT leaders struggle to find real-time OSS support. And that's going to be key to helping them solve that problem with our solution, right? And I would also tell you that companies are challenged today with bringing in skilled workers who have OSS experience. Another great way to approach them around the IBM solution. Next, please. So why is open source important out there, right? So there's a bunch of bullets here, right? It's agile, right? It gives you the ability to innovate faster. It's flexible. You're not locked into a single vendor, no high licensing costs. But some of the other things that aren't listed out here are things like it helps drive faster business outcomes, and that you can see the value of OSS for running mission critical apps, right? So we talked about that a minute ago. It's not just for DevOps anymore. And you can also see that more cloud-based applications tend to power business operations. So the OS packages are key now to what infrastructure solutions the clients are making. Next. So many of you may already know this, but you may not. So I thought I would just tell you about the 2 flavors of open source software, right? And I would be remiss in not giving the definition up front, right? So while you can read this, I'm going to read it to you anyway, right? OSS is by definition software which source code is published and made available to the public. So therefore, anyone can copy, modify, redistribute the soft code, and they don't pay royalties or fees, right? So that is what community open software is. It's your freeware that you download off of the web, and there is a support mechanism, but that support mechanism is the community. So any of the developers join the community, and they are the ones that in turn have to answer your questions or help you out with issues. And while big companies participate in those communities, if that's your only way of getting support, it certainly can slow you down. The other side of it is commercial open, right? So with commercial open, it's not just the community, it also gives you a subscription. So it basically takes that freeware and hardens it for you with some key things like stability, certifications, and security help. And I give you an example here at the bottom with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, right? So Jen, who's on the call with me, has a great illustration about a puppy as a great example. Jen, do you want to give it to the group?
Yeah, so, one of the examples we always had, I came from a long time at Red Hat before I came to IBM. And one of the ways we were always trained on the differences between commercial and community, in terms of community open source support, it's like, it's free like a puppy, right? You can hear freezing beer, freezing bottled water, right? I like the puppy reference because to me, it's someone gives you a puppy, it's all great, it's free, but there's a lot of costs on the back end, right? You got to take it to the vet, you have to buy it food, you have to take care of it. It's not exactly free. And that's what customers are seeing. So what you're going to see in a lot of your customer bases are a mix of commercial, i.e. Red Hat and SUSE, maybe Canonical, and a mix of commercial and community packages built in. So when you're talking to a customer and they say, oh no, we don't use any community software, probably not necessarily true. you're probably just speaking to the wrong person. So that's what I would say.
Thanks, Jen.
Yep.
So Mark, if we can move to the next chart, this will just show you some of the advantages and disadvantages of open source software, just to give you a better feel. So from advantages, you're going to see that it's free, it's flexible, it's stable, right? You'll see all these great things about OSS in general. But some of the disadvantages, right, are the lack of its friendly interfaces. So it's a little harder to use. Sometimes you run into compatibility issues, right? Especially when you're using proprietary hardware. There's also liability issues out there, right? Because you have no big company or no large vendor standing behind this software. It's your responsibility then to own the compliance and legal regulations in the use of it, right? And then we forget that there's these unexpected costs, kind of like what Jen's just example with the puppy, right? There's costs of training, importing the data, putting together the interfaces, setting up the hardware. The list it can grow quite a bit. So next chart, please. So IBM now supports a product list of almost 250 various products. And what I like about this chart, and I use it as a reference myself, is that it's categorized, right? To help you know where these pieces of software live from a stack or category perspective. Jen, do you have anything you want to add to this, or we'll move on to the next chart?
The only thing I would add here, and I think it kind of calls it out, people are probably thinking right now, you know, didn't you guys buy Red Hat, right? Why are we advertising community versions of CentOS and Ansible and that type of thing? What we're finding is there's a lot of customers that aren't quite ready to move to OpenShift, for example, or they're running Ansible, in which case one of the components of Ansible is Postgres under the covers, right? They may need more comprehensive support for an element that's included in an enterprise product for compliance purposes or some kind of governance internally. I'm working with a financial company now that buys a lot of Ansible, but they also need comprehensive support for Postgres, and they don't want to pay enterprise DB for it, right? So this is where our portfolio here can not only act as standalone support for customers that aren't using enterprise software, but they can also augment the current portfolio you might be selling them already. So that's all I would add right here, because there are a lot on here that kind of lend itself to being a competitor of enterprise software. And that's not how we look at it. We look at it, if a customer's gone down the path of using community versions, then we're here to support them.
Thank you. Next, please, Mark. So there is a business value and a targeted audience, and all these three pillars here, whether it's a business leader, a technical leader, or the developer, they all find value in using open source. But with working with our team that has our OSS solution, they will tell you, and Jen will back me up here, that the real sweet spot is in the middle, right? Because too high up the stack, they think their companies don't download that software from the internet, right? That's against their rules, right? So, but when you look at the technical leader, the business owner, that's really the sweet spot to have these discussions, right? And can really recognize some key values to progress and have successful projects within their organization. Next. Okay, so Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about what is this IBM solution we have for OSS.
Yep, thank you. So part of our offering is the ability to differentiate yourself from competitors, right? There's not a lot of companies that do this type of support for 250 packages. You might find a vendor that can sell database support, for example, but they might not know if the issue stems from something outside of that database product that they're supporting, they might not be able to help you. The beauty of the IBM support solution is that we focus on interoperability. So if you're running a database and your database goes down, your issue might not even be in the database itself. It might be some Java connector in your environment that's throwing it off or degrading the data or something. So our team of experts is able to diagnose the entire software stack, not necessarily just the package you're supporting. Our fix includes not only break fix and installation and configuration support that they would normally expect from a vendor, but custom code fixes. So in my example with Postgres, I can, swap it out with MySQL or any other product that we support. In the event your customer goes down, we're going to first go to the community to see if there's an available patch. If there's not an available patch that's released, what we do is we go ahead and write what we call a custom workaround, which is a temporary fix that gets your customer back up and running so they're stable while that community works on the actual formal fix or patch. So what it is our goal is to get the customer up and running. We contribute the code back to the open source community, whether or not they choose to adopt it and put it in their code, or they may say, no, we got something better coming. We'll point the customer to the fix, the formal fix from the community once it's released, so we can make sure they don't fork the code. But it's a very interesting niche offering in that we're able to prioritize the customer's need versus them relying on the community to put it on their list and get to it when they can. So it's an interesting offering. Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, next, please, Mark. Jen, I'm going to let you continue here.
Yeah, so one of the things we run into with customers is they are running all these various open source components in their environment, and they're calling Red Hat if there's an issue. They might be calling SUSE if there's an issue. They're going to the open source community if there's a problem. One thing we want to get clear is that nobody knows open source better than IBM. We've been supporting it for over 20 years. We've had this offering in place for over 6. And we're able to provide that service level objective that your customer needs with guaranteed response times. So we're going to be able to offer them 24/7 or 9/5 support. We're able to provide proactive support on top of that to give them 30-minute response times. We have competitive pricing because this is not a license or a subscription, right? We're able to be very competitive. Susan will go into the bundles that are already sitting in ISAT, but we also have the ability to do enterprise-based pricing. So anytime you have an opportunity that seems to be pretty big, you are absolutely able to engage with my team, and we can come in and put together a special bid for you. So it's extremely versatile and flexible to meet the needs of your customer. So it's extremely simple, right? They're going to get 1-800-IBM serve they can call. They're going to have access to the custom code fixes, and they have the ability to get very proactive white glove service through IBM with a dedicated access code and, like I said, enhanced response times to get them a quicker answer.
And nobody else does this, correct, Jen?
There's very few vendors that do it. There's a few out there. Many of them are specialized to, like I said, databases. For example, they might do MySQL, Postgres, Maria, Cassandra, that type of thing, but they don't do necessarily development tools, or they might not do the operating system layer. We're one of the few vendors out there that can do as many packages as we can do in one place.
Next, please, Mark. So Jen alluded to bundles. So what we did not too long ago was we tried to simplify this offering. So we came out with an OSS bundle where you can select up to 6 community open source software packages, and it is predefined pricing. So when you go and you put together the bundle, you're going to determine what type of coverage you want, the length of the contract, right? So you know what, Mark, I think the next page even depicts this better. This is what you need to get from your client in order to get a quote for OSS support, right? Which packages the clients want supported and the number of servers, what support level they want, the 9x5 or the 7x24, the coverage period, the platform on which the open source package is running, and the operating system that it's running on. Okay, so if you have this information, it's very easy to get an OSS bundled quote, or as Jen mentioned, you can go out to ISAT and get a more customized quote as well. We just tried to apply a little bit of an easy button to being able to get this out in front of the clients. One of the things that I have heard from partners is that a lot of times having this type of bundle gets the client's feet wet, lets them see how good we are at this. so that they open it up and expand it to other OSS products. Next. All right, so who at the client should you consider? Those migrating to the cloud, those who are your Red Hat clients and your SUSE clients, clients expressing pain points around Linux support, right? And basically it's a cross market, right? This doesn't apply to any single market. This is an offering that could be used across markets. Next, please. So why sell this? Why do you care about selling this or not, right? Well, as a business partner firm, one of the nice things that any TSS offering offers is a way to create recurring revenue. And that's exactly what you can do with this offering as well. But it's a new way. Maybe it's not just doing renewals, right? But it's the ability to create incremental recurring revenue. Because it comes in under our MVS portfolio, it comes to you as a discounted price, and in turn, then you can set the price to the client. It gives you a new audience inside of that same client that you've been working with for years. It allows you to demonstrate your knowledge of the customer's environment. It gives you the ability to be kind of on the cutting edge. The other thing is now you have the opportunity to focus on projects, not just products in their environment, gaining different levels of credibility by being able to do that, right? And when you're project focused, you have the ability to uncover other opportunities that are touching those applications in the environment, right? And it's a differentiated solution and a cost savings for your client, right? As we mentioned, IBM is one of the few companies that can do this, especially to the degree that we can. So IBM's created an easy button for you with bundles, where we've set pricing and predictability around the offering. We give you a bundle that offers your client to get support line and also meet service level objectives. And you should be out there targeting every Red Hat and SUSE customer because you already have that built-in audience. And one of the other unique things is that IBM has an open source proactive reporting insights tool, which is included as well. I believe that's free, correct, Jen?
It is. And what it is it was created internally in conjunction with Watson. And what it does is it combines data, it consolidates data from NIST and several other public facing databases where community open source users are used to going to research any common security vulnerabilities that are out there. So that's a giant time suck for them, right? They're supposed to be developing applications. They're not supposed to be having to look for security vulnerabilities. We've created a tool that automates that for them. So for any product they have under support through IBM TSS, we will give them access to this tool. They'll go ahead and set up an account and it will email them, daily, weekly, monthly, however often they want it, with this curated content based on their environment that comes to their inbox and lets them know if there's a high vulnerability, a medium, or a low. But that's all included for free.
Thank you. So Mark, we're just going to finish up here because I know we're coming up at the top of the hour. So if you could just page forward. All right, so what are the next steps? It's really to get that discussion started with your client, and there's some key questions there. In the backup section of this deck is questions based on the role inside of your customer's environment. Maybe even you're talking to procurement. So what would be some good questions for you to ask somebody in procurement in order to see if there might be opportunities for this type of solution? We're going to look to engage the IBM team for help. So you've had the opportunity today to hear Jennifer Miller. So Jen is available to you as our business development manager, as well as several other people from her team that we can engage both with you and with the client. Okay, don't forget to include, when you're doing your renewals, look to include Linux OSS and any of our software services as part of that total solution at renewal time. We're happy to help have you reach out to us for ideas and assistance. And there are workshops available and additional help that can be provided as well. So I would like to thank everybody for your time and thank you for inviting us to this call today. And please reach out with any questions.
Thank you so much, Sue. And thank you to our other presenters, Erin, Jose, Noah, and of course, Jen. The recording will be available as soon as I can get it uploaded. So if you do have folks in your organization who weren't able to attend today's call, be sure to share it. And of course, if you have any questions or you need some more clarification, feel free to contact myself, mark.miller@ingrammicro.com, and I'd be happy to help. With that, thanks for attending today's presentations. Take care.